Welcome to Leveling Up, Taking Action. Today we'll discuss the secret to what employers are looking for, core competencies. We're going to ground ourselves in Brene Brown's advice on taking action. So today we'll learn to dig deep, get deliberate, inspired, and going. So in taking action, what can you do to get that call back, to nail the interview, to improve your career? The answer is complex, but you first need to know what it takes and then take action on it. So what we're introducing today not only helps you figure out if a job is a good fit for you, it applies to tailoring your resume, interview preparation, and ultimately securing the job or position or promotion that you want. So in our experience with students of all ages, this knowledge can help everyone we've worked with who isn't already keenly aware. So those just starting their career to those with fully established careers. So we'll start first with a bit of a paradigm shift from an individual perspective to the employer perspective. When we go searching for jobs, we often think to ourselves, I'm looking for my dream job, a job I'm going to love. This is the individual perspective. To get a call back and secure a job, we have to shift our minds to the employer perspective. The potential employer is thinking to themselves, who will best meet our needs in this position? So you can think to yourself, what would I look for if I were the hiring manager? So you could think that what an employer is thinking to themselves, we're looking for someone who has the skills, experience, and strengths that show they will succeed here. Those skills and experience and strengths together are competencies. So the best way to get that dream job is to emphasize how your competencies match the employer's needs. So today's roadmap, we're going to talk about 3 core things. 1, what are competencies? 2, how to identify core competencies? And 3, prove it. Connect the dots with examples. So what are competencies? Competencies are simply characteristics of successful performers that help them be successful. So here's a couple written out here for you to sort of wrap your head around it. Things like initiative, interpersonal skills, customer service, integrity, organizational skills, ability to execute. Employers use these competencies when they screen resumes, when they interview you, when they select employees, when they evaluate employees, when they identify they want to move people up or give promotions or bonuses. So thinking about, now that we know what competencies could be, we want to know, how do I identify core competencies? Oftentimes when we're looking at a job description, competencies that an employer is looking for can be explicitly identified in the required qualifications or responsibilities section, but that's not all. When competencies aren't identified, look further. There are a few steps you can take to help yourself identify what the employer's needs are. So an action you can take in identifying core competencies is step 1. Think about the obvious competencies for this position. Remember that we're taking the employer perspective to understand the organization's values and needs as well. So step 1, obvious competencies for a position. The first one there. Are you applying to a coordinator position? There are some pretty clear competencies that you are going to have to show you have. Organization, communication, coordination. Yes, the word explicitly coordination is important. Collaboration. Perhaps you're applying to a communication position. So of course you're going to note your written communication and oral communication experience, your interpersonal awareness. Show your skills in relationship building potentially. Maybe you're applying to a management position. You would need to show that your ability in achieving results, your initiative, your decisiveness. So when you're thinking about positions that you're applying for, the competencies that they're looking for in you oftentimes are pretty obvious. So step 2 is looking deeper. Look for keywords that are repeated several times in the job description. This feels obvious, but it's a really important step for you to actually map out and look through this job description to see what are they looking for? What trends do I see? So I've highlighted a few things here in an example job description. I see words like map, networking, independent, minimal supervision, training others, use ArcGIS. So as I'm pulling out these key words from the job description, you're looking for both explicit things that they're looking for, as well as overarching competencies, things like independence. So as an example, does the description list train others or create maps and ArcGIS several times? That's a competency they're clearly looking for. So if you have experience with them, be sure those are actual words in your resume. And step 3 is once you've thought through the obvious competencies for the position, once you've looked for those keywords that tell you explicitly and also some overarching trends of what they're looking for in an employee, you may have a long list. So step 3 is if you have a long list, narrow down to the most critical competencies for the position. So you might narrow down your list based on the reflection you just did. And additionally, you might think, I don't actually have experience in all of these competencies. So I'm going to highlight the competencies and strengths that I do have experience in, or my natural strengths and abilities that would lead me to be successful in these. For a little bit of help, just to wrap your head around it even more, I'm going to share a list of the 10 most common, not in rank order, competencies that employees are looking for. And this is not specific to environment or conservation at all. This is just in general. So I'll give you a moment to read through here. We've got achievement, results orientation, initiative, analytical thinking. A lot of us at the Nelson Institute are going to be particularly skilled in a lot of these areas. So a question we can consistently ask ourselves that we often forget to do is, what are they looking for and how do I match? So our third piece on our roadmap today is now we've got to prove it. Connect the dots with examples. So ultimately, your job is to emphasize how your competencies match the employer's needs. You've identified the core competencies and skills that they're looking for. Now you connect the dots for them. That's how they're going to see that your past success predicts the future success. Some important things about taking action. Once you've identified these core competencies and you're working on proving it, what does that actually look like? So one is use the keywords in your resume. So on average, the time spent scanning a resume when people are looking them over for any applicant, they actually only spend 8 seconds before the reviewer makes an assessment. So the key words you use here are critical to bumping you to the top of the pile. And also know that there are automatic softwares that look for those keywords. So if you see words over and over in a job description, use them in your resume. That's the opportunity for you to move ahead to the top of the pile. And I just want to make a note that the job of a resume is really to just get an interview. It's not to list everything you've ever done. The reviewer doesn't have time to read it all and connect the dots for you. So if it's not relevant to the competencies, really heavily consider removing it from your resume. So when you work through a resume, you think about every line, every word, and make it count. You ask yourself, does this show that I'm capable of what they're looking for? So rather than getting lost in too many lines or words, they'll have the ability to focus on why you are a good match, and they're going to want to hear more from you in an interview. Another action you can take once you've identified those core competencies is to really be well prepared for your interview. So this is a secret power. So if you've ever felt like, I have no idea what they're going to ask me in an interview. I need to prepare for everything, or you get overwhelmed, they're likely going to ask you about the core competencies of the posting they've shared. So use those, once you've identified, to help you prepare. So you think to yourself, how have I shown I'm capable of this in a past example? And if I don't have a direct experience, how would my strengths allow me to still succeed in this area? So if you think about interviewing as storytelling, you're the one just connecting the dots for them from your past experience to the competencies they're looking for in a candidate. In a future video, I'm happy to share about 2 different methods for preparing for an interview called the PAR method and the STAR method. And if you're curious, or if you've struggled in interviews before or are looking to improve how you prepare for interviews, look those up. STAR is just as it sounds, STAR. You talk about the situation, the task, the action you took, and the results that came from it. So how do you know what to prepare for, what stories to be prepared for to tell? You would have to know what core competencies they're likely looking for. So we asked in the beginning, what can you do to get the call back? What can you do to nail the interview? What can you do to improve your career? And really, ultimately, step 1 is really that understanding and shifting to an employer perspective, identifying core competencies to tailor every one of your applications, and lastly, using those to emphasize how my competencies match the employer's needs. So whether it's resumes, job interviews, promotional interviews, you've got to prove it and highlight how you are a good match to that job. If you want to go deeper, I highly recommend these resources. The top 2 books are awesome: Competency-Based Resumes, Competency-Based Interviews. An additional resource for resumes in particular, Resumes for Dummies, I learned about it in former training as a career development facilitator. It's actually extremely helpful, so I highly recommend it. And if you haven't yet, check out SuccessWorks. Whether you're an undergrad student or a graduate student, they are willing to work with you. They can do one-on-one appointments. They have so many resources on their website. They're specialized in natural resource and environment. So really, really awesome resource that I highly recommend once you actually get into the nitty-gritty of getting out into applying to jobs. Thanks for joining our Leveling Up video today. And let us know if you have any questions about the secret to what employers are looking for. Thanks.